make some. Okay, so I'm going to, Dan, so this is, I'm Chuck Fall, and we are formally recording a Reclaim Pacific Green Party Democracy meeting of membership concerned about what happened at the last February convention and the Opavote result. And we have an agenda that is being shared on a screen. And we're going to follow this agenda and have a meeting. And so technically, Suzia is absent, and I think what we want to demonstrate somehow through a participant list, we'll make a record of who's present. Dan could take his stop sharing and show the gallery view, and people can see who's present at this meeting. And let me see if I can conceivably. Let me see. We'll stop by those. Do you want to continue? I'm gonna stop Dan's. Oh, you're still sharing, right, Dan?
Yeah.
Okay, well then go back and do your screen. I screwed something up here. Is that you, Dan? Have I messed up the screen? I think I have.
That's not me.
Okay, so so now we have a gallery view. Dan's going to I don't want to do this. Okay, so what is the first agenda item, Dan?
Recognition of the Opavote March with the result as valid and seating of elected members. Unfortunately, that's not something we really have to vote to do. So here we are.
So
we don't have a quorum till Suzia gets here.
But what we stand on is that the results of that Opavote, that the data points that went into the Opavote, the data points being supporting membership was established and registration with the Secretary of State, and that those were we agreed we would use the Opavote, and we accept that the results at the close of the voting period are what we're going to go with. We're not going to argue any deep points about anything there. We're just taking the Opavote result on face value, and we accept that all those that registered to participate in the convention in the voting were vetted as supporting members on account that they got the ballot that was sent out. And so any discussion or thoughts on this is, I mean, we're standing on the provision that that's the result of the convention. And we want to remind people of the rules of order. And the rules of order is that the Green Party business is done at convention by those present. I'll just give a little quick background. With the introduction of the COVID, the disruption of the normal customary practice of meeting in person at a venue was thrown, and we reverted to Zoom. There's always been a tension. Well, there's not a tension. The rule is very clear that absentee voting is specified for 3 categories, and that is selecting our SEC, voting for candidates for ballot access under the Green Party Pacific Green name, and endorsing ballot measures. So those are all permitted for absentee. Everything else would be assumed to be conducted as the business of the party at the convention. Bylaws, which require 2/3 super vote majority, platform changes, all are voted on at convention. That's our rules. Subsequent to the introduction of the COVID and the voting through Opavote, there has been a move to expand the absentee voting into all categories of voting. And as we saw in this last election, extended into a full week of post-convention voting period. And in the case of the final quote, official report, which we argue is not official and not legal, took a whole nother week to advance. So if this is the democracy that those who want to liquefy our democracy, it's a profound departure from our rules of order. It has no standing. And so we're accepting the use of Opavote. We're not debating that, but that we're accepting what was produced at the close of convention. And that's really, this is convention business. Convention has the power to accept or dismiss. And finally, this issue of what happened at the vote, we're taking up here and we're accepting that it is what it is. However, it may be that this has to be taken up at a convention. Okay, other thoughts and for discussion on this. Is there any reason we should not operate on the premise, on the theory that what happened with the Opavote, that's essentially what we're going to go with and it's accurate and valid?
John has a question, and I do too, about the result of the vote. Devin was also one of the three of us that was elected before our votes were thrown out. So how does this, Chuck, how do you foresee this actually working when they've already accepted each other, right? And Devin's a part of the group there. How do you foresee this moving forward?
Okay, then Dan's muted, has his hand up. Eva has her hand up. Let's go ahead and get some inputs and let's hold that question. How do we perceive this unfolding and going further? What was John Q? If you have a question, John Q, I'll look in the chat. So Dan, why don't you respond to what was just posed by Lori, and then we'll go to Eva.
First, I'll give Eva a chance to go first if she wants.
Okay, Eva, go.
So I was just thinking of moving to suggest that any other meetings that have happened since the vote that are claiming to be the Green Party should be deemed null and void. It's an idea or a suggestion.
Yes. Okay, good point, Eva. Thank you. Take your hand down. Thank you very much. Dan, go.
I agree with Eva that the last SCC meeting, which refused to seat me and Lori and did seat Amy and Mary and allow them to vote, was out of order, and that what it did in terms of voting should be disregarded. John, we did send invites to Devin, Natalie, and Felipe.
Devin formally declined to attend. He sent me an email reply.
Okay, regarding what we can do, Lori, we've discussed this privately quite a bit. I'm going to say for the benefit of the others that it is not so cut and dry that this little group of Natalie's can simply declare itself the winner and get away with it when they have to throw out more than half the ballots to do it. There's a number of elements, just organizational elements that they control, but most of what they or others consider their power is pretty much an illusion. And we have already taken steps to inform the state that the election is under dispute, and they're now not taking certain kinds of filings until the dispute is resolved. And we've managed to do apparently the same with national, because I'm still getting emails from the national lists. When we get down to item number 4, restoring management to democratic control of the membership, I'll have a little bit more to mention. And then the long story short for today is that we now have a PAC, and we can raise and spend money. And
well, let's hold that agenda item for later. Let's just so what we're doing right now is simply taking a stand that the Opavote is valid and accurate.
Yes.
Okay, let's go to Charles. What furthermore, what can you add to that point?
Well, fortunately, at least in my opinion, that's not something we need as the SEC to even vote on with Susie still absent, because you know the SEC is not in the position, it's not empowered to decide whether or not a convention vote is valid. So it's valid in and of itself by just having happened.
Out of the
So here
event,
we are.
out of the event of the convention. So as we've discussed, the people of the convention are the authority of the party,
That's
not
right.
the SEC, not this ad hoc rogue
That's
election
right. We're
committee.
servants. We're just here to
So we're
help people.
we are accepting that the convention has spoken. And if there's a debate about the results of Opavote, it needs to go back to convention that generated that result. Okay, let's get some, we have hands up from Charles and then Mark. Charles, what are your thoughts?
Something to keep in mind, Seth, the last time we spoke with him, said repeatedly that there were more votes than just the Opavote.
Seth has said a lot of stuff.
I don't know what he meant by that. He didn't say.
It's
Very
okay.
true. So
Charles, it's all
basically, that would just go back to the next convention.
Seth can show those names. He hasn't shown those names. We don't know what he's talking about. It has no standing as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. I
we
just
have,
wanted to,
no,
it's a potential complication. I wanted it on the
no,
table.
Seth is representing a lot of stuff, Charles, that doesn't
This is
have
true.
standing. He's making up stuff and he claims it and asserts it, but it's all, much of it is specious. It's not true. Okay, Mark, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think we've discussed this before, but I think that what we witnessed was blatant fraud from Seth, because for one, none of these votes were contested. I mean, everybody got sent ballots. If they were contested, and people were not properly credentialed, that should have been raised before the ballots were ever sent. But he waited not just the end of the convention. He waited 5 days after the convention to come up with this whole idea that the votes, were not properly credentialed. So he was looking for a strategy on how to disqualify votes. And then the first thing that he looked at was decertifying Lane, which he changed the language, of course, from
Lynn Benton.
what we proposed, which was to reinstate to decertify. But so after that vote, he knocked out 22 votes to get that result. And then since Lane was all of a sudden decertified, he knocked out, more votes to where there was only 36 people voting to get the rest of the results. So it's blatantly, it's the most transparent fraud I think anybody can ever see. And Seth, I think we mentioned maybe running for office in the state, and Natalie as well. So this is going to be a real thorn in their side politically. And I think that needs to be brought to everybody's attention, that would you really want people like this in government? And the answer is no, because they're blatantly corrupt.
Okay, thank you. And Lori, you have your hand up. What are you thinking, Lori?
Well, everything was anomalous the way the schema was set up.
Actually, Lori, your audio is very funky.
Yeah. Can you hear me any better now?
A little bit, just focus. Yeah.
Would help.
Okay. Well, everything was anomalous with the whole vote schema. And I believe it was done intentionally so that and there's no transparency at all. There was no meeting ever before where members weren't allowed to sit in and observe the vote counting or participate or debate if there was a problem. This is unheard of tactics. It reminds me of what the Democrats have done. I don't like it. It's gone on too long. I don't know what people plan to really do about it. How is it going to be dealt with properly? These people don't seem to care that they actually cheated, because they did. You can't throw out votes after the fact like they did. It's never been done before, ever. that has there's no historical basis. None.
Thank you, Lori. And we can circle back to this, this question of the points where I think malfeasance is showing up. Bill has his hand up. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mentioned this before. I'll remind people that during the convention, Barbara asked why the Opavote was not anonymous. And Seth said, I can make it anonymous. And he more or less indicated that that was his promise, that he was going to make it anonymous. He did not. And he used the fact that the votes weren't anonymous to identify who to throw out. So I think that's a very important point, because the whole vote was based on a false premise that the voting would be anonymous, and it wasn't.
Good point, Bill. And that's a thank you. So there's a whole number of anomalies about this. And one of them is technically the SEC is responsible for the convention. And Seth represents that Natalie was not involved in the quote elections committee, that he acted in concert with Ken and Justin. I have no recollection of a formal vote by the SEC. It was all very uncomfortable going into this convention because there was such bad feeling because of the suppression. And we know there's a long history of these events of, in effect, the SEC suppressing the will of the convention. It happened after Green Liberty resolutions were voted on. That it's explained that because Seth was not able to vote absentee on the Green Liberty resolutions, that qualified for the SEC to then interrupt what was a decision by convention attendees to follow our rules of order, which said business that's not absentee is taken care of at convention. And that's what we did. So, and that's been claimed as a rationale to read the bylaws currently under an extreme reading of it. But I've explained there's no equivalence to throwing out 39 votes and Seth Woolley not being able to vote absentee on the Green Liberty resolutions, as was promised to him by Natalie. Evidently, she was texting him saying he would be getting a ballot. He did vote for the SEC at that election but he did not get the resolutions. And that is a sore point that has in effect haunted our democracy. And they now act with a kind of impunity, which is brazen and actually grotesque, with this broad brush dismissal of the Lane chapter membership that was filed in paperwork by Dan, by listing out, these would be a Green Liberty Lane grouping, and then the Lynn Benton chapter members were summarily dismissed, evidently, even though the Lynn Benton is on a financial dues sharing arrangement with the PGP PAC. And so,
how did the election committee come about?
it was done not through a formal, it's not a formally recognized committee by there was not a formal vote to create an elections committee. It's ad hoc, created by Natalie and with Ken and Justin and Seth to count the vote. I'm certain that had the vote gone the way they wanted through the Opavote, that they would have accepted those results.
So they were appointed by what? By
They
Secretary
assumed
and Natalie,
One person.
and their job was to count the vote. That was it, right?
they assumed the duties. It was done not through a formal vote of the SEC. It was an informal that they just took it on. and because Natalie controlled the convention. When I had control of, quote, the Opavote, the convention, on the January 2023 convention, it was open. We actually showed the email being fed into the Opavote. We got the results. On that actual voting, Natalie added another 30 emails at 1 a.m, evidently, and sent it
Well,
out.
who made the decision to, who decided to give this election committee the authority to interpret the bylaws? That seemed like not only counting, but interpreting the bylaws was assumed.
It was not provided by the SEC.
Yeah. Or the convention.
The convention wasn't
Yeah.
even discussed in the convention. The
So they
convention
just
was given no opportunity.
They
to
pulled the committee
participate in
out of
this
their ass.
business. Yeah, okay, so Mark has his hand up, and then Lori's hand. Go ahead.
While the election committee may have not been, ever approved by the SEC, when it came time to approve the altered votes, Natalie voted for it along with Felipe, and then they brought in people who were on the SEC whose terms had expired in order to pass that. So
Correct.
they are complicit in what the election committee did.
Yes. Yes. Lori, thoughts?
So the deal with some of this, there are a couple of us that were present when Natalie and Seth made an appearance at our Lynn Benton meeting. And Natalie admitted that this was done, these actions were taken to prevent Dan and Lori from becoming SEC members. And that specifically, they threw out Lynn Benton so that, quote, we would know what it felt like to be disenfranchised, unquote. Natalie said this to our group. It was supposed to be recorded. I don't have the record. There were a few of us present for this. And I made sure that she repeated it more than once. And Mike had set up the Zoom, Mike Fieldsting. He's one of the members who is serving on the national committee, who had his vote taken away for this convention. This is actual silliness. You don't say that somebody who's sitting on a committee right now is not properly vetted as a supporting member. Their time is well accounted for on any city, and the NC is a long-standing city. I was helping John with convention tie. I was on the convention team. In the past, there'd have been no question that at least us two would have been there. So, but for her to openly admit to our chapter that this was done to punish us, not us, but the chapter that I belong to, for transgression, perceived transgression, and just with impunity, this is absolutely inappropriate for the Green Party. This is big party politicking at its worst. It's not Green Party politics. It's not how we treat one another. I'm disgusted. I'm ready to leave the party. It's not right.
Thank you, Lori. And I see you in the chat. There was interesting language where he said the committee report wasn't from the elections committee. And that headline was changed, evidently. But So we are in a twilight zone with the existing members of our party who have completely gone off the reservation relative to being present together at convention doing party business. This has been radically pulled from, and Susie made it. Blessed be.
Yeah.
Susie, good to see you. So oh, Dan has his hand up, and then I want to just kind of close the circle on this matter of business on our agenda. Dan, what are your thoughts? And then Charles.
Number one, what this twilight zone that we are in is what Lori has referred to as the party being broken. All our rules, all our processes were thrown aside by someone. They decided to just flip over the chessboard, so to speak, and just institute chaos. And in my opinion, the way to fix that is to simply grab on to our processes, get our traditions back. Our main tradition is that the convention is the thing that decides. These party decisions are made by the votes. We were voted here. Susie just showed up, so now we have a quorum. That makes me feel a little bit better. I think that part of restoring things is doing exactly what we are today. We're the people who were elected are now here, using the mandate given by that vote to simply start doing business. And I think that if we do business right, the others are setting us a low bar to get over, because they're doing a whole lot of things that are pissing a whole lot of people off. So let's do things right, and I think we'll succeed. Good to see you, Susie. I'm done.
Same,
Okay.
sorry, was out to dinner with my son.
Understandable.
I figured so much. Okay, good. Thanks for being here. Glad you had time for family. And we're actually on our first agenda item. Dan, I'm going to ask you to share your screen again in a moment. Let's go to Charles, and then I want to kind of just make a formal recognition of business and go to the next agenda item. Charles, thoughts?
Briefly, I just wanted to confirm what Lori said about Natalie's testimony to our chapter. So if Seth may have been trying to shield her, but she confirmed that it was her responsibility.
Her responsibility.
And also confirmed that apparently she considers, as far as she's concerned, the bylaws, the rules are completely optional, at least for her.
What does
She's the queen of the party and does as she pleases.
What do you think Natalie's responsible for, Charles? Say it clearly.
Well, for the elections committee and for stealing the election.
Okay. Okay. And that was conveyed to you at a Zoom meeting at the Lynn Benton, and she and Seth came and presented and kind of tried to explain why the vote, the quote official vote to throw out 39 votes had to happen.
Yes. Now their quote's explanation is pretty nonsensical. I think it's also fundamentally dishonest in that that's not what happened. That's a pretext. What happened was that they lost the election, couldn't face it, and threw over the chessboard.
Correct. And again,
That's all I need to say.
Okay, I agree with, I accept what you're saying. Take your hand down, Charles, so we don't call you again.
Wait a minute, did Seth and Natalie went to Corvallis and met with the Lynn Benton group?
No, they went on a Zoom meeting, Marv, and met them.
Oh, okay.
And
I believe that they're the only reason they showed up to our chapter was to gloat and to also try to maintain an investment, because they're getting money from our chapter and from Mike Fieldstein for these mailings. I don't think there should be any money contributed to.
Well, which is terribly ironic that they throw out all the votes from the very chapter they're actually on a fundraising sharing program. And it's like, come on, this is so gross. What the Seth's specious thinking that he applied to reading narrowly the bylaws to the point where he basically says the SEC actually had no responsibility in the election, and it was entirely up to the chapters. And because the chapters didn't show up in the way he perceived appropriate, then they get tossed. Versus our argument is that the SEC effectively sanctioned and validated on account that the ballots were, the registration was conducted. We brought people in, we screened for their supporting status, we screened for their registration with the Secretary of State, and then they got the ballot. And that's, and we accept the results. And that's what I want to formally, and we're going to go to Sabrina after. Sabrina, what is your thought, unless you can hold it to the next item? Because what I want to do is resolve proposed agenda recognition, Opavote March, result is valid, and seating of elected members. So let's just do this. Is there anybody, we're in a kind of we're practicing our democracy. The SEC that was elected through the Opavote is present. Chuck, Dan, Lori, and Suzia. Suzia and I from the prior. Dan and Lori are newly elected, and we, as a voting bloc within the SEC, recognize that the Opavote March 3rd result is valid, and we're assuming a leadership responsibility here. Does anybody think this is inappropriate or wrong? Please say so.
Well, doesn't the convention have authority? Here you are assuming the SEC is the four of you are.
No, so let me explain, Marv. Yes, the convention has the authority. The convention spoke, and the result of the convention is in the March 3rd event. Those results are what we're standing on. We're simply acknowledging what the convention result is. Does that make sense, Marv?
Well, yeah, that makes sense, but this is a convention. Is this not a convention?
No, we're not a convention, Marv. We're a meeting of,
okay. All right.
Green
All
Party
right.
membership.
All right. Go ahead. No, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm just, you're trying to get clear. I'm just simply asking through simple consensus. Anybody have an objection to making the assumption that the March 3rd result is valid?
Hang on, John has a question.
Say why.
John has a question in the chat, and then we should probably let Sabrina speak here.
Okay, go, Sabrina.
Oh, nothing much. I just wanted to confirm that I heard that they were actually gloating about throwing out the vote.
That's what Dan said. Or that's what Charles represented, that they showed up at the.
It was Lori, but okay.
But let's not dwell on that. Let's focus on the simple question. And this is our consensus. Does anybody have a block, an objection to assuming the Opavote result is accurate and valid? Then
No, I do confirm. I just think we should perhaps spell out, because for people reading this may get a little confused of which result is valid, that this is the first one of all 100 and so many votes cast.
Oh, the midnight results.
Of
Maybe.
77, there were 77 ballots, and those 77 ballots, or 75, were counted. None were thrown out, and they found that Lori and Dan were elected to the SEC.
Right.
As well as Devin, and we accept Devin was elected to the SEC.
Well, and there was a number of other differences.
We're kicking that can down the road. At this point, we accept all the results, and in those results, the Green Liberty chapter was not decertified. Lane chapter was not decertified. The anti-knowledge did not pass into bylaws. They needed 2/3. They didn't meet threshold. So we accept all the results. My moratorium on COVID went down in flames. It got shellacked, and I accept those results. So we accept the Opavote in all of the categories of voting.
What happened to Marv? Was Marv kicked out?
No, Marv was not kicked out. And you can say that too, Dan. So we can, we can enhance this and make a better report. And that's what I think Barbara's getting
There's-
at.
We already
Uh,
did mainly.
Okay. I think
Almost
we,
all the results were clear. The only one that needs to be crunched through a meek method calculator is the national committee result. But I know what the result is going to be, but the whole way they set it up was baloney in the first place, because they should have been electing 4 delegates and up to 2 alternates, which means that everybody should have been elected. So
right. So
it's
there's,
kind of up in the air how we interpret that.
then let's
Not worry about that now.
Thank you,
we're
Dan.
just talking about the midnight March 3rd results.
Thank you, Dan. We're going to come back and unpack and make more argument about what happened. But ultimately, this is a matter for the convention to reaffirm or not. We can debate that later. What's the second agenda item, Dan, please?
Did we get a consensus on this one?
Yeah, let's vote on accepting that.
No, Marv, I asked if anybody blocks or objects, and nobody blocked or objected. Therefore, through consensus, it's accepted as valid and accurate. And that's what, that the will of the convention is expressed in that Opavote result, and we accept it and stand by it.
Now, is that a Green Party process that if nobody blocks or objects,
Yes,
then
Marv, this is striving for consensus. This is,
it's a done deal?
yes. It's
So
very beautiful.
consensus is actually fairly simple.
Yes.
And it gives everybody the opportunity to speak to their concerns. And if somebody's concerns are very great, they would throw a block up. And then we would have to stop the process and address those blocks. I mean,
Okay.
and then that's when modified consensus kicks in. If there's enough of a block of blocks, or more than one block, you really are supposed to look at the item as to whether it's something that the party should be doing. And it allows everybody to have their piece of the truth introduced and have it woven into the discussion and into the decision-making process. And that's something that these
You know,
people,
I'll just add, I have been to at least a dozen conventions, and I've never figured out what the hell you people are doing with this. The
Okay,
Green
so
Party.
Marv, we just
It's all right. No. I just wanted to make that comment.
good. No, and I appreciate it. We just conducted business. There was no block. So basically, this group, through pure consensus, accept it. There's no Robert's
Good with
rules.
it. I'm good. I'm
Okay,
good.
what's the second point, Dan?
Consider date for April or early May Zoom convention.
Okay, so I'm arguing, and I think that we need to call a formal convention before the convention that the SEC, whatever we want to call it, the rump SEC decided on. And that is that in May, I think 11th, there's going to be a convention to select delegates to basically endorse, Jill Stein and make I think it's possible that Natalie and Seth will each seek a nomination for ballot Green Party access for voting, for becoming treasurer and for becoming Secretary of State. Now, as someone's observed, I will have a very serious problem with anybody seeking the nomination who has just stolen an election from convention. So let's not get this. So what would we do at this early May Zoom convention? We would do what we just did, accept the Opavote result as the will of the convention, so that going into this next convention, basically, why do I think this is important? Because at the May convention, I assume they will operate it just like they did the other convention, which was they ripped the soul of democracy out of the party practices. It was a webinar event. It was not authentic follow the rules of order. So we would conduct a convention by rules of order, and we could discuss what the scope of business would be. But part of it is to establish that the SEC is made up of what we accept it was as a result of the vote in February. So that's, I'm going to stop there. I'm basically looking for a kind of a consensus that we need to reclaim our democracy. We need to basically conduct the convention. Now they're going to say this is illegitimate. It's not real, blah, 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 but we're going to run a convention striving for consensus, calling the vote. But we understand why we called the vote, because people who block say so. They say why they're blocking. And then the person can make an adjustment if they want. If they feel are, very strong, then they go for the vote and they get it or they don't. And so on. So Mark, you have your hand up. What are your thoughts?
Well, I guess we can refer to the illegitimate SEC as, we can either call them just the illegitimate SEC, or we can call them the kangaroo court. Is the other term. But secondly,
we can talk about that.
One of the things that we should be discussing at convention, well, we could discuss a lot of things, including, who's running for office for president, and should we be, giving all candidates equal time. Also, I think we should move to have a proposal that kicks Seth Woolley to remove his supporting membership, as well as remove Natalie supporting membership from the party, because I think what they've done now is pretty significant. It's very egregious. Egregious
is the word. Okay, I think so. Wait, I agree with you that we need to explore what this is so serious. What Seth has done is so serious. And I want to just say that this all started when Connor was sent in by what I understand is not a kind of an illegitimate action of the SEC. They sent Connor in. Connor approached them and said, I'll de-admin the Lane chapter activists so that we can get control of what they're posting, because they were COVID deniers. They were denying the official COVID narrative, and that's why they were knocked out. And this has been a haunting of the party. I came on I was kind of an innocent with the COVID, and I learned through the postings from Jack Dresser, for example, that what was represented about the COVID was actually a false narrative, and that we were being lied to. So I've become an ally in my, with the Lane chapter for advancing what I think is what we need to be doing is essentially a truth politics, calling out these big lies, and especially the COVID, the lies about going to Ukraine, the lies about why the Israelis are annihilating Gaza, and so on. So this has been suppressed, this dissident voice, and it's continuing to be suppressed. And now they've gone ballistic. They've gone on steroids. They're conducted scorched earth. And this is acting with impunity, and Green Liberty stands on the principle of accountability. So this has to be brought to account. Mark raised the prospect that one action for the convention would be to formally kind of call Seth out and Natalie for stealing an election or trying to steal an election. And our argument is it's not stolen. We are recognizing what the results are, and we're being in our leadership roles here. Okay, so Sabrina has her hand up. Please go.
Thank you. I'm thinking along the lines of you're calling them out. We should have a written and recorded deposition from the chapter, that they were speaking to, and admitting what their actions were. What do you think of that idea?
Um,
In
Who would-
terms of, well, in
go
terms
ahead,
of,
Lily.
in terms of what was said in front of us and how Mike, so you have to remember, this is the Pacific Party of Oregon, right? A party of pacifists on the Pacific Ocean, on the Pacific shore, right? And that was how this party was made. And these are peaceniks and pacifists and goodniks, you know?
Yep.
And Natalie has taken advantage of the pacifism of members like Mike and myself in the past. It just, she came and told us, just stand aside. Yep. So, we had people lose their votes. And so now you have lost yours. So, we got what we want. So let's move on.
Well, so what about a recorded deposition of those people who were at the meeting? They state, this is what we heard, so and so says it, this person writes it down, and they record it as well. This is what we heard. And this is, incriminating evidence, this deposition.
So Charles, what happened?
Yeah.
What happened, Charles, to this AI recording that was supposed to happen that Mike said?
I assume it's there. But it's a summary. It probably doesn't have everything. So we're going to have to go on. I don't think it was an actual recording.
What I'm saying is you don't need a recording even, like you could have the
We have
statement.
eyewitnesses.
Yes,
So Sabrina, yes, absolutely. What Sabrina is basically asking Lori and Charles to do is make a statement of record, and you could copy paste from the group's IO, Lori. I know you posted on conventions. You told what Natalie represented to the group, and that she was party to this ad hoc elections committee that threw out 39 votes. And she stands by that because she needed to keep Lori and Dan off. And so this is a deep, it's a sad state when certain members of our community are so insecure that they can't be with what the democracy of the convention wills. And so that's what we're struggling against right now. So do we have a hard date? So we discussed that we would do this by Zoom. We won't try to be ambitious and have a physical actual meetup, but we're going to actually call a convention. And I would put the word emergency on it. Because when there's a provision in our bylaws that say if the SCC goes dormant, if the party goes dormant, that 12 people can show up and reactivate the party through a convention event. But you need 12 people. We have more than 12 people that will show up in a state of emergency because effectively the SEC has gone rogue. They have completely departed from PGP democracy, and they've been led astray on this false notion that we need to abandon our rules of order and open the voting up to all the members, all the registered, and conduct a liquid democracy and effectively abandon our convention democracy. So we will run a convention at the beginning of May, end of April, according to our rules.
Chuck, if just as a point of information, emergency conventions are for when a scheduled convention fails to happen. Not an SEC meeting failing to happen.
Well,
we could make a case that happened in February by saying that it wasn't a real convention.
Yes.
But do we really need to call an emergency convention?
Well, then let's just call a friggin' meeting, Dan. I don't care what you want to call it.
Okay, fine. I have no objection. I
I'll
just
call it
wanted
an
to,
annual meeting. I'll call it a
I have-
meetup, to reclaim our democracy.
Chuck, I'm not objecting. I'm just like commenting on calling it an emergency.
Well, I think we're in a state of emergency, frankly. When an election gets stolen from you, I think that rises to the level.
Okay, but if we use the word emergency, it would look like we're using that mechanism.
I think this is serious enough that we could construe that
Let's
mechanism.
use the
I
word
am-
like.
Okay, but to segue, like I hear, I agree with Dan, and I expressed this before, but these people, they interpret the rules however they see fit. It's pretty specific how and why an emergency would be called. And I think you just need a large enough group to meet and to take steps to move in a new direction or a divergent direction, and not, it doesn't, it, what is the emergency is what they've done to the party over the last 2 years by disenfranchising a good share of every convention, but only on the votes that they disagreed with.
Right.
And this cannot be denied. Over and over, it can't be denied because the SEC doesn't have power to decertify votes from a convention, but they have given themselves that power, and they've done it over and over and over, and they just did it again. Whatever excuses they choose, those are merely excuses. They are not following the rules that we've always followed. And the rules are hard to change for a reason. It's so that you can't just circumvent democracy. You have to do it a certain way. And if you want to change it, you have to do it a certain way. These people are the presidential executive order people. They want to do what Obama did and Biden and Trump or anybody else. Well, I want new rules, so I'm not going to go through Congress. And that's what they're doing. And so we don't want to do that. I'll just leave. You know, I mean, I understand the fight, but this is we don't want to be those people. That's them. That's
So, okay, so Lori, let's just call, do we agree that it's appropriate that we host a meeting to reclaim PGP democracy before the next May 11th convention? Does anybody think we shouldn't do that?
I think we should call it a convention. You know,
Thank you. I agree.
Yeah, I agree, actually.
Okay.
what purpose will it serve?
Okay, so the purpose, so Dan, what purpose do you think this could serve? And then John has his hand up.
The first purpose that I would want to see it serve is to have a convention run right for once, to
Okay.
have it run by the rules of order and to not have its result just tossed aside by officers as soon as it adjourns.
Well, I ran their meetings right, and they threw me out as facilitator, and now have taken an SEC seat away from me, and my chapter's vote. So, yeah, I agree, but I did run the meetings the way they were supposed to be run.
Okay,
Lori, we're not, there's no question. I would like to bring you back in as a facilitator, but you've said you don't want to be a facilitator anymore. And I'm happy to keep you as a partisan, fighting for Green Party democracy. Let's go to John Q. And
She
then
was the best. Lori was the best.
Yeah,
of all the conventions I'd been to. She did the best job.
well, I would invite you, Lori, to facilitate, but I think you want to be partisan, and that's fine. I think you should be partisan for the democracy of the party, and that's
I'm done being nice with these people.
Okay, well,
I was very nice, and I listened. And you know, I listened enough to figure out what was going on, just like you did, Chuck. And I could see it. And when I pushed back with the rules and against their circumventing the rules, that's when they reacted and threw me out.
right.
So, yeah, I get it. And that's why I said, okay, well, I'm not your facilitator. I will be speaking my mind now. Sorry,
Good.
John. I didn't mean to step on you and Ava.
Okay, John.
No,
Q.
I think everybody is expressing their appreciation for you. What I raised my hand to bring up was I think this convention should be the presidential nominating convention. The same people that rigged the vote in February also uninvited other qualified presidential candidates. I ended up interviewing all three of them, Davi, Jorge Zavala, and this week, Jasmine Sherman. Jasmine shared with me that Kansas similarly excluded all the other people, and they only recognized 7 votes in awarding all of their delegates to Jill Stein. Massachusetts, only 33 people. California kept everyone else off the ballot, only put Jill Stein on the ballot. So the other candidates didn't even get a shot. Alaska, Jill Stein refused to debate with Jasmine Sherman and is not running as a Green. I think it has to do with the complications of Alaska politics. They actually ran Jesse Ventura last time, got decertified by the National, and then Dr. Cornel West got on their recognized Green Party, their new Green Party chapter, which is called the Aurora Party. So there wasn't a place for Jill Stein. So she's running as an independent in Alaska. But Oregon is not alone in these shenanigans. This is happening everywhere. It really is sort of a shared, I'm not sure what the right word is, a toxicity, a breakdown, an authoritarian, right-wing virus in people's minds. But I would encourage this to be a presidential nominating convention, which all of the candidates are invited, especially Jasmine. Thanks.
Okay, that's a big.
100%.
Okay, that's a whole different can of worms right there. John Q, Eva, and then Suzia, thoughts, please.
Right. Okay. So I wanted a little clarification on what Dan said. So he said he thinks this meeting that we're talking about should be a convention. Is he talking about having one before the convention? I mean, to make a convention before the convention? And then if we do the candidate thing, is that going to disrupt or distract in any way from whatever it is that you want to accomplish at the meeting?
Dan, would you take a pitch at that, and then we go to Susie?
Well, the other SCC decided on May 11th, a couple of weeks ago, for the next convention, which had absolutely nothing to do with what the last convention actually voted for, but the ballot was phrased in a way that the what it actually voted for doesn't really make any sense anyhow. So it was just another one of those vague things that they leave open to interpretation and then take advantage and interpret it. I think Chuck is proposing either May 11th or sometime earlier to have a convention. I agree that having a nominating convention would be to our advantage and also be part of the purpose. It would add to the overall purpose that what I was trying to get at was just showing the way back to the road that we just completely departed from last February, when we had this webinar and the votes thrown out and all that. And as John says, yes, presidential candidates just completely kicked out and only Jill Stein's representative allowed to speak in person. So it's any opportunity to do things right and simply is how we prove that and not just prove our legitimacy, but actually do our job.
Okay, so what was the date that we chose in the true votes on the ballots for the convention?
That's the trick, see, because under our bylaws, that we're supposed to pick the next 2 convention dates, and in our normal rules of order, we say, okay, what's our next convention date going to be? We discuss that, we choose the next date, and we say, all right, what's the next date after that? We discuss that, we choose that. This time they took 5 different dates and just threw them all into one bag and put an approval vote for all of them, picked out the top two. And it's possible that the two of them were like April 7th and April 13th. So you could have, it could have ended up that April 7th would be the first one and April 13th would be the second one, just 1 week later. So there was no indication like which one would be the first, which would be the second.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I would interpret
So
it.
so this meeting that we're talking about though, and that you just suggested, you are suggesting a convention, like the
Yes.
convention or a convention. Okay.
Of course, yes.
Competing
Okay.
convention.
I just
Uh,
wanted,
Just one other
what was
thing.
that?
The date that
minute.
did get the most votes was June 1st and 2nd, and that's our
Okay.
tradition is to go right after very soon after the primary, the major party primaries end.
But
However,
the desire from that Natalie has expressed in communications on Groups.io is for the earliest nominating date in order to basically have that decision made so that the presidential candidate can proceed with campaigning with that endorsement from
Which the state party never offers any significant help in any
well,
regard. Anyhow.
so in any case, it's unclear why there's been a push for the earlier date, but it is apparently to accommodate the campaign for the Stein campaign. Mark has his hand up, and then Suzia, and then Mark. Suzia, what are your thoughts?
Well, in alignment with acknowledging the vote of the convention, I'm going to say I'm still in support of June 1st. Also, lately I've been listening that there's a whole lot of money out there to rid the United States of any third-party potential, you know, so that's certainly part of what we're suffering from. I'm convinced of it.
Right. Well, the Democrats are going to try to challenge ballot access for the Green Party and other independent parties in this election. That's part of their strategy. That's true. But as far as this convention, my understanding is what we want to do here is delegitimize the convention that the insurrectionist SCC approved, which is the middle of May, right? So
no, we approved June 1st in that vote.
Right. But we want to have a convention before them. Is why we're moving the date before them essentially.
Right, and I guess I want to question that strategy among other things. I mean, because I feel like if we're going to say that we believe that that vote was correct, then we should stick with the date we chose as well. Is my thought.
So their convention, so we have to beat them to the punch. Is essentially what we're going to have to do.
So, but the beating to the punch is. Personally, I hear where John Q is coming from in terms of making, an issue with the seeming favoritism that Oregon has extended to Jill against the other minor figures. So, but I think it's to Eva's point that to some extent, I accept that Jill Stein is the de facto nominee. She has the organization, she has the money, she's driving the program, and there's all kinds of inertia, kind of energy flowing in her direction. And I wish we had done a better job of hosting debates. We could still host a debate between Cornel West and Jill Stein and Robert Kennedy in Oregon or on the Pacific Coast. That would be a very interesting event to see happen. But I think we have to be careful that the reason we have a convention before the May 11 convention is to establish what the last convention result is. Because they're not going to give us the time of day in May to have a hearing about the Opavote event. And they're going to, I will appeal and make that demand as a matter of entering the minutes from the prior convention into the record. That is something that we've stopped doing. We, when I wanted to enter the record, the minutes of the March SCC decision to throw out the March convention results, that led Natalie to hire Tasha at $2,700 to facilitate a convention so that she would have control of the event. So we are running a convention before the May convention. We can discuss whether to boycott that May convention or not. We could conduct some business of our presidential thing, but I don't want to get things too confused and and this isn't to preempt the May event. I accept that the May convention, because I supported it as an SEC member in that rogue rump meeting that we had. Lori has her hand up, and then Sabrina. What are your thoughts?
Sabrina was there first.
Sabrina, go.
Hey, do you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I understand the idea of waiting, to the one that was voted on, the date that was voted on, but because of the situation, we don't have the luxury of doing that. And I think the idea of having it having the different candidates debate, and presenting them all will attract many people to the convention, and will gain a large audience that way. And we need more people to understand the situation here as well, and we'll also be facilitating the democratic process and how it really should be going for the presidential candidates, that they're all listened to and considered. And also on the convention of the illegitimate convention, I think that we shouldn't recognize that convention whatsoever and should not participate. And I think that these people must come down before that convention. And because we have we'll have a deposition of their admitting their guilt to this fraud, right? And theft of our democracy, right? And so, I mean, it's outrageous that one could think or proceed with any sort of idea that they could have a legitimate convention with their guilt, and they behaved in a very sort of criminal way, right? And so we can't recognize criminals, and we have to get it out somehow. I don't know what the channels are. I'm not hip to that process, but that has to come down before the convention, that convention that they want to hold.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina. Good thoughts. Number of hands up. Let's go to Bill Zwicker, and then Lori, Dan, and Marv. I don't know.
Marv was ahead of me.
Marv, go for it, Marv.
Since it's getting late, Chuck, could I suggest that we try to take like 1 or 2 minutes?
Yes, absolutely. We have to be disciplined here. Let's get immediately to the point and be careful.
I wanted to ask Charles if something like this happened when the Peace Party became the Progressive Party and the Pacific Green Party became the Pacific Green Party. Is there a precedent for this happening 25 years ago when the Pacific Green Party started? Was there a split like this in the Peace Party?
Not that I know of. There were times that a number of people resigned. Some of them went over to the Progressive Party, but not like this.
Yeah.
Um, and we actually should be at least considering whether splitting the party in this way was exactly what Natalie had in mind.
Okay, let's keep going through the hands. Thank you, Marv. Bill, and then Lori, and then Dan.
Yeah, I want to speak to the question of the legitimacy of the SEC itself. I think right now we can argue that the SEC is in contention. There's two versions of the SEC right now. So we need to be able to resolve that and somehow have a process to affirm who is actually on the SEC.
I would ask Dan to respond to that. So Bill, is there anything you want to add?
No, that's pretty much it. We're talking about the SEC. And
Okay,
in one case, we're talking about the stolen SEC. In the other case, we're talking about the
Okay.
one that was passed at convention. We need to
okay,
resolve that.
okay. So let's Dan, do you want to go, and then Lori, and then Eva?
No, let's defer to Lori and settle the question of of scheduling this next convention. And then I'll respond to that later.
So the fact that John threw that idea out, I think it would be I think if you think about vitality and functionality and open and fair elections, it's not what we have nationally. It's not what we have in the state. Everybody is starting to be picked for us, and our supposed party leadership, as a majority, have done the same thing that John speaks about in other states. I facilitated a national meeting where a state was split into two parties, and they did not want to recognize the second. And I gave them the opportunity to speak, and they were heard, and they were allowed to exist. And I think that it's important that people hear what's going on. But I really like the idea of this, of like a potential panel, or I don't know if any of these people can actually make a meeting earlier, but that would be such a good way to bring people together for an open and fair election talk, because there's a lot to be said about the Greens nationally and state to state. I think the Democrat, the left eats itself, they always say, and it's very true. And Natalie, Bill might be right. Get rid of the people that are the minority report, but we're not the minority report. They're the minority report. We have the majority. There's no reason for us to be run off or to stand for this BS. So I mean, if John would be willing to put together a panel, that would be a next step, and it could be the headliner for an earlier quote unquote meeting. But it doesn't have, it could be a convention, or it could be a gathering. It could be the spring meeting. It could be a lot of things, rejuvenation, regeneration, who knows? Anyway.
Okay, Dan, and then Eva.
Okay, regarding the results from the last convention about the next convention, first place was June 1st and 2nd. And this is going by the midnight results. First place was June 1st and 2nd. Second place was a tie with 30 votes between, I think it was April 13th and January something. So that's again why it was dumb for it to be an ambiguous vote, because now you have to decide whether, okay, well, is it April and June, or is it June and January? Now, April apparently was, whoever proposed that realized that was a bit too early, and they weren't able to plan it ahead of time, or plan it on time, or get it ready on time. But I would go along with saying that, well, okay, we get April had a claim to being first, but it was too early, so do late April, early May, and then do June as a second nominating convention. Now, I wanted to add, I'm not sure if this was someone else's question, but the situation at the Secretary of State's office is going to potentially make all of these nominating conventions. We're going to have to resolve probably all of these internal differences in order for the state to accept any candidates, or we'll have to come to an agreement on candidates for the state to be willing to accept a filing. Probably is possible that they won't, and I'm going to have a conversation with that about them in the future. And I've already spoken too long. I have important stuff to say in the next agenda, so let's try and if we come to an agreement about scheduling this next convention, let's proceed with that. John.
Eva, your thoughts?
I just wanted to say, we just made a consensus on accepting the votes as we know them, and that included the new SCC members. And so I don't agree that there's a dual SCC. So I don't see why we need to discuss that or whatever was suggested. That's all I want to say.
Dan, would you respond to that, please?
We know there's not a dual SCC.
Okay,
State of
no,
Oregon
because
doesn't know.
I'm sorry, somebody had just brought that up. Bill, I guess.
Okay.
Okay,
Just brought that up. I thought I had heard that.
Bill, let me ask you.
That's
Let
why.
me answer your question privately later. Let's get back to the scheduling this convention if we are going to do that right now.
Who has a calendar in front of them? I will look at my calendar.
When are they planning theirs?
May 11th, I think.
A decision has been made. There's a convention. I want us to avoid, well, I guess what I'm saying is the point is, Eva, yes, the four of us need to start functioning and behaving in leadership as SCC, but the function of SCC is it's just running the administrative pieces of the party, and the critical thing is running our conventions. So what's happened is the conventions have been thrown upside down. So we're just staking out before that, and so what's I don't have my calendar. I need someone to give me some dates in April.
May 4th and 5th is the first weekend in May.
Okay, then I move we use what we're asking our membership. So the question here is going to be, are we going to abandon the May 11th event and boycott it? Mark has suggested that as a way to, but then there's the practical functional business. And this goes back to John Q's point of, participating in the Green Party US, go through the process of assigning delegates to vote at the National Convention to select Jill Stein. And I don't want to waste time playing a political charade of alternative perspectives to Jill Stein. I want Jill Stein to get off of her her pro-vaccine. I mean, I would rather us be lobbying her to fight against the big lies of the plutocracy.
If you don't open up the process, there's no reason for her to not consider herself the anointed one. I mean, you just can't get around it. That's what these people have done. That's what's going on in their campaign too.
And I would concede that. I would say I don't want to fight over try to elevate, what's her name? You know, the
Jasmine.
Unicorn Party, or whatever her name is, the only other contender who.
It's not about elevation. It's about allowing these people to speak on behalf of their standing, and they're leaving the party too. So I mean, this is what's going on. The Green Party is approaching a crisis point. They think they're really big and they're moving and shaking, but what they're doing is they're becoming Democrat light.
It also legitimizes our group because we're putting on this democratic event, looking at the presidential hopefuls, right? And it'll draw more people our way, that will recognize us and support us, so it's also, strategic, and you could ask Jill Stein directly your questions while she's there, right?
Okay, Dan, what are your thoughts? So we're looking for a date. And now the bottom line question is, what's going to schedule with the convention? And are we going to run the business of inviting Jasmine Sherman to face off with Jill Stein for delegates from Oregon?
Well, I would ask John who still is even vying for the Green Party. I thought that a couple of them have jumped ship to get cross-party endorsements.
Yeah.
The three candidates that were uninvited by Natalie were Davi, George Zavala, and Jasmine Sherman. So those were the three who were scheduled to come in February, and she explicitly sent a mail to those three saying they weren't welcome. So I think it would be proper to invite at least those three, and there may be others.
But there's the practical issue of I mean, these are, I mean,
So Chuck, if you don't think about it as a practical issue, but as we need a theme, okay? We're going to have a party. It's a Green Party, and we need a theme. And we are not recognized by these people that say they're running the state party. That includes the people that were newly elected. That includes the people that were appointed by the majority of the SDC, and it includes the other two remaining SDC members and all of their friends. And so there's three things you have to consider. It's outreach. How are you going to get a major message out? Let's fold back in Lynn Benton and Lane counties and see what they'd like to see. Mike's got people that are local that are having action. So what you could do is just open it up, just like they do generally, for different candidacies and actions that are going on, and hear from some people, different candidates running in different races, just like you would expect at any nominating convention.
Okay, well then
you do know that it feels more and more like there's really two parties developing. Either it's a factionalizing. You and Suzia are on the SDC that exists, and you're trying to support the candidates that won who were removed. And it's factional. But you have two parties that were disenfranchised to the extent that they've been removed from standing. So then you have the opportunity to bring them back in to another format. You have to, I know that we've talked about these things, and you have to see where if you weave it all in and you're looking to formalize things, it's not going to happen with these people. It's
let's go to Dan. Let's hold that thought. I hear you, and I'm Dan and then Mark, or whatever order.
Mark was ahead of me. But it's,
Well, a couple of things. The date before their convention would be the 4th and the 5th. Otherwise, we have to go back to April. It would be the weekend before the 4th and 5th of May would be the 27th and 28th of April.
Well, we're just going to do one event. We're not.
I know. I'm just saying, if we want to schedule it before their convention.
I like the end of April personally.
Okay. All right. Well, it's either going to be the end of April or it's going to be the
Okay,
4th.
so let's talk about back to the purpose of this event.
Second, I think even though I've been a Jill Stein supporter for a long time, I think it's important to not just anoint somebody. That's what the Democrats do. They have a preordained candidate. I think it's important to have a debate and give everybody a chance that's in this race.
Then let me just
have a debate. And I think if Jill wants to show up, that would be great. And if she doesn't, because she's become too close to Natalie and company, then I guess she's not going to show up. But
she's not going to come to this event. I promise you.
Well, that's fine then. I think that we should give the other candidates a voice, because they're being disenfranchised, like, we're being disenfranchised. And I think we should not recognize the convention in the next weekend. I think we should tell Natalie and crew that they're insurrectionists and they're illegitimate. And if they want to change that, they're going to have to
That's exactly right, Mark. The process is far more important than any result that comes out.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Let's go to Dan.
Chuck, it is the simplest thing in the world to have an election to divide 7 or however many delegates we get to the convention amongst 3 or 4 candidates. It's easy peasy. We only need like half an hour, maybe have them all speak for 10 minutes. They'll probably be thrilled to all get to talk for 10 minutes.
So can I just
question and answer? And it's easy. I don't understand what your objection is to doing.
Can I make a remark, please?
Yeah.
I'm not objecting to anything.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get a clear game plan.
Okay,
Right.
let's look at dates then. Can everybody that's here attend something on the 28th of April?
I can.
Yeah, I can.
I can, and I cannot do May 4th.
Then let's let it be April 28th. We can invite Jasmine Sherman. I don't think we should invite Davi because he's gone with this other party called No Labels. And if Jasmine Sherman
Sorry, Chuck, was he still looking for a Green Party endorsement though? Or maybe
I could bring in.
Let John say. Oh, here's John. John can weigh in because I'd like John to set up something if we can do this.
Davi is working with multiple parties. I think many of the smaller candidates are where they're being blocked by the Green Party in other states. They're working with other parties that have ballot access.
Why are the Greens blocking anybody? I mean, for crying out loud.
Because they want to anoint Jill Stein.
You don't block the process.
That's correct. They don't want
block it. This is not consent. This is not.
I think it's too late to try to make an affectation of debates for presidential debates. However, I would support that we invite Jasmine Sherman, who is sincerely, whoever's formally I don't even know if they officially qualify at the national level, for.
How about something like diverging views and voices? Other potential candidates.
Let me just, we can frame it that way. The point is that we are giving the hearing for the voices that were suppressed, and so now we have this. Are we going to boycott the May event, or participate in the May 11th event? I'm inclined to participate because it's a function of the Green Party PGP convention. And it's the party business that Natalie and Seth don't own that. They're going to try to control it, but they don't own it. So if we have our convention 2 weeks before, we recognize Jasmine Sherman, we invite her to solicit delegates from the PGP membership. And then we would take that into the May 11th convention to say, there's a contingent that supports Jasmine Sherman. So Jill will get blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. However, I don't even understand the process for selecting delegates, but it would be an expression of the debates that we believe in that have been denied. And we could do that, and I have no problem with that.
Maybe we vote on it, how we see it. I agree with Lori. I think she has a great vision for this.
Okay, I'm a little skeptical, but Dan, what are your thoughts?
If we nominate somebody for president at our convention that we, the SCC, scheduled and people showed up and voted, that's the nominee. I don't understand this idea of going into May 11th and saying, oh, well, yeah, we recommend. No, we're going to likely have conflicting nominations unless this self-resolves beforehand. And we're going to have to figure out what to do about that. But if we just fold our cards and say, oh, well, this is like some kind of advisory vote, and then show into another webinar on May 11th, we're just going to be chaining ourselves to the same old thing. You got to show some.
Who's willing to help set this up and do the background work? I mean, obviously Dan knows what he's talking about in terms of, you know, what we're looking for. I'd like to see John step up, and I know that John really wants to hear from these people, and that's why he played their videos. But it would be interesting to be able to ask questions of any of the candidacies, and then maybe Stein's you know, front man would show up again, which I highly doubt. But we could give a voice to the voiceless. We could, you know, and it would give us a chance to segue into why we're doing what we're doing at all, because our chapters were kicked out by the SCC, right? I mean, you had half the state kicked out of chapters, right? There's only three. There's only three left, right?
If we show up, we won't even get to vote on business. At least not Lane or Green Liberty Caucus qualifiers.
Yeah, but
Lori makes an excellent point. If we accomplish something like giving those candidates a voice, we do something, that is the best authority there is for the existence of a political party, actually doing something. So I think that's a great idea.
And we can recognize Lane and Liberty as chapters, because that was part of the vote. They never got kicked out.
All we wanted was to be represented on the Nation Builder website. That was what
I know, but they
put that into
out. I mean, how did they change? You know, it's like everything they did was they lied, they changed the ballots, they did everything big party politicers do. And I'm sick of these people. And I want to hear from membership. We have a very small group here, and we need like 70 people. So a goal would be, how do we set up a meeting to get 70 people to come? If we sit and bitch about the same shit, we're not going to get 70 people. If we offer them something interesting and some talk of candidacy, and we're going to make sure that these chapters are allowed. But see, we have no control over Nation Builder, do we, Dan?
Okay, thank you, Lori.
This is why I get to my item. Let's sorry if I'm jumping on it, on the other hand raisers. I'd like to propose that we tentatively schedule a convention for April 27th, which is a Saturday. Not a 2-day convention, and hash out the details of the specifics of the agenda, because it's already 29 days away. Okay, Lori, Saturday or Sunday, but pick one of those dates, and then build the agenda and the specifics later and simply pick the date tonight.
Does anybody have a problem? What's your first choice, Dan? I mean, Sue's, do we do a Saturday or Sunday?
Lori likes Sunday, so let's
Okay, then let's go
I'm
with
fine
Sunday.
with Sunday.
It's not up to me. It's up to the group. I'll
Yes,
be around. I want to hear from everybody here, just like
I'm good
do
with
something.
Sunday.
I'm good with Sunday too.
Let's
Me
do
also.
Sunday.
What
Yeah,
about
I'm
John?
good with either.
What about John? What do you think? Do you think that you'd be able to get any of these people to just show up for a half hour or an hour or whatever we can figure out?
Should I ask those candidates which would be better for them? I would think Sunday might be easier.
That's what I was thinking too.
Let's
Because
tentatively pick Sunday.
Saturday's a stump day, you know?
Well, let's tentatively pick Sunday.
Okay,
And-
so
and
we've
check for
okay.
check for consensus on that.
And does anybody block setting Sunday, April 28th as a date for a convention? Okay, so we've made a decision. We can hash out the details of that. And
Mark and Charles, you didn't have your hand up because
let's-
you don't like it, right?
No,
Let's-
real quick, no,
Well, I'm fine.
I think, you know, if this is not a nominating convention, which sounds like it's not gonna be, we could just have candidates
really?
show up, you know, to debate or whatever, or discuss their platform. And then we should really be moving the nominating platform back to what people elected, which is June 1st.
Well, we are going to do nominations, I think, Mark, but we can do a
Whatever's
second one.
gonna work. I mean, I'm just throwing
You
that
can
out.
do two. You can do two nominating. You can do the earlier one to try to capture the idea of some of the members of the party, and then you can do a second one. Somewhere along the line, these people will have to throw out some concessions. I saw them mealy mouthing some stuff. Oh, well, you should do this and that, you know, from Natalie, but that's not going to happen.
What Natalie is asking for in writing is that I would agree that are to ignore the bylaws and allow absentee voting for all categories. And that the absentee voting wouldn't be solicited. It would be predicated on registering for the convention to get triggered to receive a ballot.
Well, but that's the whole point. You have to register at the convention to receive a ballot, and you have to be eligible to vote to receive a
So
ballot.
all I'm asking for Natalie to do is to actually create a bylaws change that would enshrine, that would basically recognize that you don't have to be at convention to do the party business. And that's what I'm pushing for from them. They need to speak and be honest. They're not being honest. So we got some hands up, Charles and Suzia.
Well, Chuck, you're not going to ask her to do anything, are you? I mean, aren't you done with that?
Well, I mean, part of our business is to strip Seth of his membership for stealing an election, and Natalie as well. So, you know, let's not get distracted about the next convention being about nominating, because if it's a nominating convention, then we need to advertise in 3 publications 30 days before the event.
That's easy.
The window.
That's so easy.
Okay,
So
well,
that's the
it needs
whole
to be
idea,
tonight
Chuck,
before we
about
go to
getting
bed.
people.
How do
That's
you-
all.
we don't have 30 days hardly.
No, it's past 30 days. We've I don't know. Is it 30? No, it's past 30 days. So if it's a nominating, then we need to do it in May.
Nope. It's 3 newspapers of record by 10 days.
Okay. If that's okay, that's
10,
fine.
10 days in advance for nominating and publish the agenda by 14 days in advance. Under the circumstances, I don't think we need to worry about inviting people to submit agenda items 30 days in advance anyhow.
How long would it be for us to throw together some ideas about how to approach this? Any ideas in terms of how the meeting looks, how it feels, how it's set up, what we present to members, because it's going straight to Lynn Benton and Lane.
Let's appoint a convention committee to develop this over the next week or
Right,
two.
so just, yeah, let's do the conventions committee. And so Lori, the business of this convention is to establish that the Opavote results are accurate. We can choose to sanction the rogue elections committee people or not. I think some people would like to just kind of gloss over that and not spend too much time with that and just start assuming responsibilities, which would then is advancing a convention, nominating, who's going to, assigning the delegates, and so basically preempting the work of what's intended for the May 11th event.
Not really preempting it, but offering alternatives, just like we always have. I mean, I think you have an open and inviting, and voice to the voiceless, and I think some wordsmithing, and
We could call it an alternative convention, actually.
no, this is reclaiming PGP democracy. We're going to run the convention as following our rules of order.
Chuck, we used to be the alternative party, so that's
we are an alternative party. We
Well, right
are
now,
an alternative to the big two. We always have been.
Well, we don't need to use that language among ourselves. We need
No,
to
but-
just about reclaiming our democracy,
Right.
which has been basically stolen by the cabal, Seth and and Natalie.
We need a deposition. We need to just get them out on their own admission.
Sabrina, I spent a lot of time deposing my statements to these people, and they could care less. And I put it on all of the open public list as a matter of record. So it's there. Don't think it's not. And Charles made his statements too. We even put out a statement from our chapter.
Well, there has to be some other place to take this, not just giving.
Well, if there was a legal way to deal with these people and what they've done, then that would be the way that we would go.
Okay, I think there is.
What is it?
Okay, so Chuck mentioned that, remember, we've put a hold at the Secretary of State's office that any elections are contested. And he's thinking, Dan, are you thinking they'll probably just keep that hold on it until we inform them that it's been resolved?
One of the reasons they gave me for declining to let us do a political party pack was the letter that was sent by Chuck and Susie. They said they're not taking any more filings until the dispute is resolved. That's what I meant when I say that may extend to nominations. Nominations come from their
Okay,
end.
so that's the hold we have on them.
Yes.
That's excellent.
So there will
Nobody
be
can nominate until they've resolved the dispute. What's it worth to them?
Seth and Natalie both want to run for
They
office.
both want to run. That's beautiful.
So
Well,
I
we have
can't-
to run somebody for a statewide office.
What do you mean it's
We do, but
run? We don't want them to run. They're
No,
just
we don't.
They're
But
crooked.
we need a substitute.
Yeah. Natalie, what did she do last time she ran? She handed all of us to
Okay.
Yeah. So no, I don't trust Natalie on any level. Natalie is a criminal as far as I'm concerned, and I don't think she understands. I think she doesn't look at anything properly in the right light, and I don't know what's happened to her or why she thinks this is okay. But I've been in the party for a long time, and I think so. If there's no standing with the state on either side of the coin here, then we approach it in a different way. We have an open, like a spring, a spring celebration of Green Party, you know, and open voices, open mic, open voices, bring everybody in. Have these candidates speak where they weren't allowed to. All they got was John standing up for them and Natalie lying about her role in it. She lies about her role in everything. She said, "Oh, I did not uninvite them."
Yeah, this sounds like a good idea.
I think that trick with the last, yeah, I think she thought Kotek was gonna offer her a seat on a commission. That's right.
Probably will, Marv.
I don't think so. She'd have done it by now.
And
Kotek
well,
would have done it
when
by
this is
now.
all said and done, she'll be in good standing with the Dems.
I think that somebody on Kotek's staff did a little research on her background and they said, oh my God, we don't want to have anything to do with this one.
Other hands are up. I don't know who's on the list. Susie has her hand up. Charles still.
Well, can we move forward on, so let's just put down, we have April 28th.
Yep.
As a date, and we need to put some brainstorming into how this meeting looks and feels. If we're on hold, just like they're on hold, then what's the point of calling it a nominating convention at all? Let's do something different.
Well, we can
Good idea.
nominate people. We just can't, and we've done this before. There's a due date right after the primary when we're allowed to register nominations at the Secretary of State's office. Am I right about that?
Yep.
That's the way it used to be.
It's usually early June.
What's that date?
Early June usually.
Okay.
Yeah, early June, right? So, but
another
we can
reason we wait
nominate,
till June
make our
usually.
nominating decisions before that. It's just it leaves some time to take them back.
Yep.
There's also, we generally hold more than one nominating convention, so we can hold another one in June.
Yeah.
And that's important because Mike wants to run for Mike Beilstein wants to run for the state legislature, which is devoutly to be wished. And I'm sure there are others. And we're hoping that somebody will want to compete with Natalie and Seth for those offices.
Oh,
Because I'd love it if they were just could not get nominated. That would be
Nominating Mike
that
is
would be
something we'd
wonderful.
probably all agree on.
Yeah.
So do we want to appoint a committee to hash out the logistics right now, or just have people contact us if they're interested? Because it's 9:30. I really want to tell you my story.
Okay, let's
Wait, I have a question about committees before Dan tells the story and Chuck goes on. My
Susie,
question is
ask-
this: if there were 3 members of the committee, why are we only singling out Seth? Why are we not attacking all 3 and perhaps 4 members? Why not the entire?
For certain, Justin and Bob, I called them out. You know, I mean, I called them all out.
And Adams was apparently a member of the shady elections committee.
Yeah, and
Right.
Ken,
Shadowy elections.
they were all about kicking me out too. It's the same group of people, and I've called him out, and I told Bob that he's operating under a misconception. He's been led astray. That none of these things are possible that they've done under our bylaws or constitution. The SEC doesn't have these overriding powers, and they certainly never had the power to give interpretation of our bylaws to another committee.
Right,
That's
but
clear.
we're talking about defrocking Seth, but why not the entire committee? Because
Yeah.
they all have blood on their hands.
Well, if you want to recognize who was elected and who's a standing member, it leaves Natalie and Felipe still on the committee, and Devin, who was elected as well.
No, I'm talking about the elections committee, not the SCC.
Oh, certainly they should they should all be held accountable. And frankly, I
Yeah,
think
probably right.
Justin and Ken did nothing. I think it was all Seth. I think this is all subterfuge. And he had some AI chat bot write up that stupid report. He gave an incorrect history of the party.
Hmm.
It's all foolishness.
Mm-hmm.
Seth may not be quite as smart as he thinks he is.
Okay,
Seth is extremely smart, but
so wait a second,
Yeah.
Lori, let's understand that the conventions committee to advance this work, can we do this at the Rise Up Green Liberty Caucus kind of discussion list, Dan?
We're not all on it. Let's find out who's interested first
Okay,
before
okay.
figuring out how they will communicate.
I don't think this moves forward without John's involvement at a deep level. And
Okay.
so I'd like
I'm
John,
in.
yeah, okay.
Well, then
I'm willing to work
we could use the group's IO convention list and just start talking, saying we're planning this and just start speaking frankly there, Dan. What do you think?
No,
Okay.
we're not going to go.
You're
We're not
trying
going
to
to go.
light a fire, Chuck?
Right, we're not going to go talk about this in Natalie's house. That's nuts. And this is why you need to hear my story because.
Okay, let's hear your story. Go for it.
Well, we need. Let's finish getting volunteers for the community.
Okay, so I'm willing to help, even though I'm on the edge of the precipice. John has spoken. He's willing to help with getting some feedback from these candidates. If we can't get them to come, we'll figure something else out. But I think John's got a breadth of connections, and I think we could make it really fun, and we could have some good debate. So I know John's in, I'm in.
I'll help.
Sabrina.
Yeah.
That's three of us.
Lori, do you remember the convention when Wonder Woman ran?
Oh my God. I think I do.
It was Soulmates with Keanu Reeves. I mean, I love
Salem.
those days. Yeah. Was that right?
And Roseanne Barr.
She was quite the character.
Yeah, Rose.
That was great. Oh, and when I brought in both AIPAC and a Palestinian representative for that debate, that was great.
Okay, so Susie, Chuck, Lori, do we trust each other to add people, other volunteers as they step forward after this call to develop this convention? Then we can move on.
Dan, it's important that you're involved because you
Yes, I already volunteered.
Yeah, okay.
We got John Q, me, you, Sabrina, and we agree that other people that step forward, we can add them.
Okay, so
Well, let me know how I can help, and I will.
Okay, you just stepped forward.
Well, we're gonna come to the group with a structure of an outline for a convention, and it's gonna include some debate, but it can't just be entirely about debate, because I think part of the convention has to be about what happened in February.
We have to give voice to the voiceless. We have to re-enfranchise our chapters.
Right. Okay, Dan, where are we on the agenda? Eva has her hand up. What's next?
Go ahead, Eva, but we're going to my item next because it's already 9:30.
Yeah, I just want to say that if needed, what Lori was talking about the different fraudulent things that Seth was carrying out, I would add about what he did with the quote unquote anti-knowledge platform, especially the 5G. I mean, I could attest to a lot of the lies there that were perpetrated. If needed.
Seth has a financial stake in that.
Eva, yes, you should do that.
Got it. Thank you for saying that. Now that makes so much sense. Oh my God, at least there's some kind of answer. Are you sure about that?
Yeah, so I had an extended conversation with him after the last convention, before he decided to, do what he did. And he went at length to describe his business and his dealings with government entities. And his company has redesigned Doppler radar to be portable. And it works with 5G tech.
No
And
wonder.
yeah, well,
Got
he
it.
said every time he
There
got,
you go. That's
has a
even
history.
more.
Yeah, he has a
I'm s-
history and working with 5G tech and
Got it.
working with smart
Oh my God.
type things. And yeah, so
Okay. That even adds more to the fraud and the lies. I mean, more, substantial evidence,
More weight.
substantiating evidence. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I just wanted to say I can talk all about that. I can talk, all night about that case that
Try
he
to keep
tried
it
to
fairly
say is
brief.
nothing. I'm just saying, I know a lot about the case. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, great.
So I can counter any lies about it. And it was full of lies. And let me just say one more thing, as far as what he put on top on the vote. He tried to say that it was about engineering as opposed to that it was about biological effects. The platforms that were submitted. So just pointing that out.
well, they changed the language in most of the items that were presented for vote and changed the titling and the language to make them.
Yeah.
And this was
Yeah.
on almost every item, right, Dan?
Then they lost.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. It was
All
like
right,
a
Dan.
cartoon.
Third world.
Mark has his
Okay.
hand up and then Dan should
No,
share.
I have I'm
Eva,
first. I'm first
Okay.
this time.
Eva, take your hand down if
Sorry,
you're
Mark.
done. So we're not confused. Mark has his hand up. Keep going. Now
Okay,
your
is my,
turn.
is my camera? I'm not screen sharing right now. Okay, good. We have $200 right now in a new pack that Chuck and I formed, and we got that done today. It is a miscellaneous pack on account of the state not taking new filings for political party packs for Pacific Green because, ironically, of what Chuck and Susie had told them, but that's fine because a miscellaneous pack can do the exact same things. We wanted chapter names on the party website. Now we can build our own website. All this there's a Zoom account for the other SEC. We can do that. We can get a Zoom account. We can spend money basically. We also have done some free things. Let me share my screen here. Just to get up to speed, this copy of the minutes that I've been taking is on a new Google account called Green Party Oregon at gmail.com. We have that. We can build our own forums and get people in. The most important thing, though, that is developed is that we have this pack. And in my opinion, our main advantage to this pack is that we have people running it who are not into wasting a whole ton of money, such as $2,700 hiring a Democrat to facilitate our conventions and spending like $66 on Bitwarden, which is just a password manager. And I've got no idea why they do that. I've talked with Brian Setzler about this. He's confident that we can pretty much do all the same things as a political party committee using a miscellaneous pack. So I'd like to formally propose, now that we have a quorum here, that we, acting as the SCC, assume control of this pack with myself as treasurer, as I'm currently listed, and Chuck has one director, that we can add the others as directors
I want to
as
comment.
needs be. Yeah.
It's a little bit off topic, but can we please move out of Google? Not today, but soon.
I hate Google.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you so much. Me too.
Yes, I've been preparing this sort of transitional stuff where we keep everything that was there and just take it forward, and we can. I've got no objection to changing it to something else.
Thank you.
But there's a lot of data in there, a lot of old records and stuff. So do we have a consensus for taking control of this pack and using it?
Can I say something first?
Yes.
I think it's a beautiful idea. It's exciting, but I don't understand how we allow the, fraudulent criminal people to continue with the Pacific Green Party.
We can't stop them.
I've tried.
The state-
I've stood up. We've all stood up, Sabrina. We've all countered their narrative, and Amy and Mary could care less.
The long story short, Sabrina, is the old PAC, which is called Pacific Green Party of Oregon, has been recognized by the state as being the PAC that was originally formed by the party. Of course, it has gone rogue. The people controlling it have gone rogue, but it is still controlled by Ken Adams. And we've gotten the state to not accept new filings, but what they won't do is kick Ken Adams off of that. We could try, but they probably
Step
wouldn't.
down.
No, he's still treasurer. Seth stepped down as secretary, and they put Justin in. But
It's like you can't get away from.
He needs a replacement, Lori. Someone needs to replace him.
Yeah, and if they do try to
We've got
replace him,
Dan with our PAC, so
if that actually, if they do try to replace him, the state might refuse, because they'd have to be accepting a new officer list. And they've already agreed that until we resolve our disputes, they're not going to accept new officer lists unless the dispute is ended.
well,
Then
I'd
the
like
officer
to
list
move
is
for
disputed.
approval of this of the Green Party of Oregon PAC, our miscellaneous PAC, and under the Green Party of Oregon, or whatever we're going to do.
I kind of like miscellaneous. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's open ended.
Yeah, he can go anywhere.
Yes, that's right.
You guys.
So it is called.
So does anybody object that there's a Green Party of Oregon Oregon Green Party organizing committee PAC?
Chuck, I'd say it's up to the SEC members. Only 4 of them.
Well, does any of the SEC oppose this?
Are we going to appoint 2 more members, or what's going on with that? Because if we follow the rules,
You could, yeah.
that we'd have to have two more people. I don't see how that particular piece is really going to work well, but there are 4 of us.
I think for our purposes right now, all we're doing here is creating a committee that can accept donations.
We're countering the authoritarians, is what we're doing.
Hey, good on us. So, Dan, are you going to put the name of it called miscellaneous in this note?
It's
not
not part of the name. It's just the PAC type. No one's going to see that. They're just going to see Oregon Green Party.
Oh, I see. So we're still under the name of Oregon Green Party Organizing Committee. We're just under miscellaneous as opposed to political party?
Yes, and because it's not a political party PAC, we don't actually have to put everyone's name on it. So what I'm doing here as the treasurer of this PAC is basically, since it's strictly speaking, it's a private PAC run by myself and Chuck.
Okay.
But we're now bringing it here saying we're offering, yes, you can use the SEC I'm proposing that the SEC uses this to conduct business, offering the use of it. That's the proposal.
Okay, so are you willing to take donations? Are you ready?
I haven't set up a payment portal yet.
Okay.
We can take written checks, but I really.
Square works really good for me in my business. I like Square, but
What's it called?
Square Up.
Square.
Oh,
Okay.
Square. I like PayPal mostly.
I'll look into that, though. I already have a
I
Stripe
hate
account.
PayPal. They also are a part of the big conglomerate that shares data info.
Right.
And they're bringing in Stripe now too, and Square's on the verge, but they're still independent.
Really, I think I'll look to someone a little bit more green than Square, because Square's on its way out too, that sounds like.
Well, I don't know, but I know that there's a big deal going on with Stripe acting out against particular authors and websites that don't agree with the Democratic narrative.
Okay. Shit.
That includes PayPal, their new terms of service. They're completely transparent with the feds now. So, I mean, I just don't, yeah,
Yeah, and they also did something really wicked during the COVID, you know, something like, yeah, like fining you if you talk something COVID, but then,
yeah, they shut down,
Then-
ability to take payments on PayPal. Yeah, they did lock up accounts.
right, but
Okay.
that locking of accounts taught us a lot about attorney generals, I think. I didn't know how important they were until the truckers got locked out.
Yeah, we're learning a lot about how quickly our democracy can be stolen.
Yeah.
Mhm.
COVID really pulled all the covers off. The
Yeah,
bail-
naked head.
Hey, you guys, let's focus here. So, Dan will figure out how to process contributions. And
I
And I-
have I have a Stripe account already, and I'm experienced at using it. I did it when I was running for office in 2022.
okay, well, then let's just use the Stripe. That's what's going to be there. And
Well, first, let's just consider. Are we
I
going
don't
to use
like
it?
Stripe. I like Square. I have Stripe on part of my payment portal, but like I said, Stripe has been locking people up too with their X accounts and stuff. And Square's not. But I would just look into that, Dan. I would leave it to you, but I'm not into supporting these a-holes anymore.
Okay, but do we have
enough.
consensus to use this to conduct business?
Does anybody object that this pack is set up to advance the projects we're working on here at this reclaiming PGP democracy? Okay, let it recognize that there's no objection, no blocks, and it's
Okay.
now business. Okay.
See how good you are, Chuck, at consenting to things?
I
See?
like consensus because you actually just go straight for the jugular. Anybody block.
Absolutely. That's why they couldn't stand me, because I went straight for it.
Next part of the story, as I mentioned, we already have enough to get a website. I don't even have to set up a payment portal for that. Just use the debit card I already showed you. I talked to Joe Rowe what he thought we should do, and he said that WordPress would work. We already have several people who are experienced at building WordPress websites, so we can
How hackable are they for people like Connor and Seth?
Connor is no hacker.
Okay, well, he thinks he is.
He's a faker. He's a guy who goes around telling people that he's a tech whiz and they believe him. And
Well, he's a gigantic troll then,
yes, he is.
and so is
Hey,
Seth.
you guys, for the record, this has all been recorded. This is not going to be public. I guess this will be for our own an artifact for kind of setting up, and we can share this this recording of this meeting, this momentous meeting, because we are creating basically a political entity to square off against the existing political entity and reclaim our democracy and conduct the party in the way that that is consistent with our rules of order. And I'll just say for the record, I don't oppose using Opavote to vote, but we need to. Our next convention needs to, on the one hand, be an indictment against the February theft that Seth conducted. It needs to basically, we can't just say the Opavote is correct and ignore that. We need to actually call that out, and I think we need to either have some kind of reprimand statements, something, something of loss of confidence. No, but I think it's actually full blown.
Well, we could have agenda items with decisions and feedback from people and decisions and we need to have a good quorum. We need to have like 70 people show up or more.
Okay, so that's right. So basically, go ahead. I mean, we have the four of us, and we have the event of Opavote. And that's the voice of convention, and we're just going to accept it. And I didn't get my moratorium. You know, I was shellacked. But Green Liberty Caucus also got recognized, and as did Lane, and so on. So we are rebuilding the democracy in the party by basically taking up by hosting events to accommodate the voices in the party. So we're going to call this a convention. We're going to function in the most open spirited, honest way that we do as our direct democracy, as our rules call for, but we're going to have some real business. And the real business is basically calling out the event, the stolen election, asserting what happened as Opavote is correct and accurate. And now we're talking about the business of going into the presidential campaign. Here's Jasmine Sherman. We're giving her airtime. Jill was invited. She declined. But
Well,
we are.
and they'll be, yeah, and
You might not.
yeah, she might send a sponsor. Or,
Well, maybe she'll turn up, but somehow, so the committee, the convention agenda committee has to kind of flesh all this out, and we're going to do that. What's next on our agenda, Dan? We're going so long.
We're done, except and members bringing their ideas and concerns, and who wants to help build the website.
Total dunce on that.
Building the website.
I will start. I think Joe, I'll talk to Joe. He might.
I mean,
And what you might do is have me try to use it.
So Dan, I'll donate a few $100s to the PAC, and the PAC can hire Mike Berger to set up an account if you wanted to, but I can't, or you do it, or I'll pay you to do it.
No, we don't need to pay anybody to do it.
Okay.
That's the dumb
Oh
way.
no, I like that idea. I do. I think we should pay someone, and I think it should be you, Dan, on the side.
Oh, I don't want to be paid to do that.
Why don't you put together a framework, Dan, and Joe said that he would help.
He didn't say so, but I think he probably might. Chuck, if you and maybe Mark would be willing to contribute to this, I'd be grateful. But I'll of course work hard on it.
Well, so Mark and I are acquainted with, if we can do a WordPress. I'm good at creating pages. I'm not pages are, well, okay. So we have to create a website team. Okay. So Mark, Chuck, and Dan. Okay. Mark, you're on it. Just recruited you.
Well, they built up a pretty flashy nation builder site. But I don't think the flash dance is worth what people are getting out of it.
No, we can beat Nation Builder.
Think about Nation Builder. It has certain capabilities, that accumulate people's like emails. It's better at being orderly, and
we can do that with WordPress.
Okay,
we can beat Nation Builder with WordPress.
All right. I'm ending this meeting. I'm going to declare this meeting.
Okay.
Mark, did you
adjourn?
I'm not going to make assumptions.
Yeah, 1 second. I got something to say.
I'm going to take a final word, and then I'm going to stop the recording, and then we can hang on.
Right. As far as this convention, and maybe as far as this website is concerned too, I think when it comes to reclaiming democracy and bringing candidates in to speak about ideas, there's a lot of things we're not talking about tonight that are important questions and stuff that we really ought to be talking about, whether it's freeing Julian Assange or hands off Uhuru or this thing going on with this terrorist attack in Moscow.
Well, I think that might be the conversation for the agenda, right?
Yeah, exactly. I thought Mark was on the agenda committee. Is that not so?
But we can talk. I'll certainly volunteer, some time for this committee to talk about this stuff.
Done.
Too.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, meeting adjourned.